Okay, awesome. Thank you very much. And that was hard. I don't know if Sean's still here or if he left, but that was a really great presentation. I feel like that's difficult to follow up with. That that was really inspiring. I was inspired, and I felt renewed in the purpose of working at the church. So I'll talk first, and then I'll turn the rest of the time over to Sabrina, and she'll talk about some things. But my name is Matthew Havertz, and I work in the publishing services department at church headquarters, and the publishing services department is in charge of media. So that would include photos and video. So like the video that Sean just showed at the end was done by the publishing services department, and other departments ask for material to be produced, and the publishing services department makes that happen. But my role specifically is I help to coordinate video and photography needs for the newsroom team. And I've been in this position for a little bit over a year now, a year and a few months. And before that, I worked part-time at the church in different positions. But I also have a little bit of experience with photography. Every once in a while, I snap a few pictures that end up being used. One of the pictures that I took for an article that we did about missionaries and COVID-19 and changing assignments got picked up by some news sources here in Utah that I did for the newsroom team. So hopefully I can share some of my experience. I'm not an expert. I'm not like a photographer per se myself, but I hope that the experience that I have, I can help share some things that will be beneficial. So this is going to be about capturing photos and videos and kind of the things that you need to know. Let's start with photos. Can you see my screen? Give me a thumbs up if you can see photos. It should just say photos there. Okay, good. I just want to make sure that the sharing is working, and feel free to raise your hand and ask any questions all the way through. There's actually a button that you can use to raise your hand. You'll see I just raised my hand, and I'll try to keep an eye on that or put questions in the chat. And I welcome that all the way through my presentation. So you may be asked to take photos, and I think I don't know for sure, but I think every area is a little bit different on the resources that they have for publishing services. Every area should have a publishing services manager who is in charge of publishing services, which again is that photos, video, media. And so sometimes they're going to hire people to do video and photos, and you might be working with a contractor and involved with that. Some areas may have full-time people that are trained to be able to do that. And a lot of times you may be taking photos yourself. And so this is information for you, but also information for people that you will be working closely with, and a reminder, and you'll be trained more specifically in your area and what's the most essential for you to know. But if you do take photos, or you're working with somebody that's taking photos, one of the most important principles to keep in mind is to make sure that the photos are candid. We don't want people looking at the camera. We want natural, authentic, sincere moments. Capture what's really happening. And one way that you can do that is kind of stand back and don't draw attention to yourself and just take pictures. Or another way you can do it is by telling people, hey, I'm here to take photos for this. It's for the newsroom article that we're writing about this, or whatever it may be. It might go on social media, and tell them that, and tell them, don't worry about me. I'm just taking photos. Just keep doing what you're doing. But whatever you do, you just want to, a lot of people want to like smile and wave and look at the camera, but you want to avoid that. You want to try to get photos as authentic as possible. Also, just try to make sure that it's lit well. one of the pieces in the church style guide is light, trying to capture light coming in. But just make sure that the people are lit well, they're not in shadows, they're not silhouetted. And here's an example of some photos that are not authentic. We try to avoid pictures like this, group photos of people looking at the camera, smiling, holding something up and looking at the camera. Occasionally, someone may ask for photos like that, and that's okay if you're getting photos for them because they've asked for it and they want that. But for the actual publications that the church puts out, the newsroom articles, social media, we want to try to avoid shots like that. We want shots that are of action, of things happening. So again, here's some examples of some of those candid photos. Another thing that you'll notice here is that all these photos are horizontal. We want to do that. We don't want to do vertical selfie modes. So hold your camera like this instead of like this. And the reason is because on the newsroom site specifically, it ends up showing up with letterboxing, black boxes on the right and left side, because the newsroom site has a carousel that's horizontal. And so they'll show up better if they're horizontal. It's okay to get vertical images now and then, but the majority of your shots, most of your shots should be horizontal photos, or who you're working with. That's what they're going to be asked to get. Are there any questions so far? Another thing to keep in mind is once you get some shots that you like, oh, we do have a question. Go ahead.
Okay, so you said that this is Sister Olson, each country's resources are different. Are we assuming that we're taking these from our phone? Are we to take a camera?
Yeah, that's a good question. I don't know the answer to that. I think if you have, my suggestion would be, if you have a nice camera that you know how to use, like you have a DSLR camera and you have some experience using it, yeah, bring it. That's the better quality camera you have, the better. As far as what resources are available in the area, I don't know. I know maybe Sabrina can chime in if she knows more information, but I know that like some areas they have some resources of employees that have experience doing video and photos, and some areas don't have those same resources.
You can always check with your publishing service manager when you get to your area and see what equipment they might have. But like Matthew said, if you feel comfortable taking your camera and you feel more comfortable using your camera, whether it's an iPhone, because let's be honest, a lot of the newer iPhones take better pictures than some of the cameras that we have. So if you feel comfortable bringing your camera, great. Or if you're more comfortable with your iPhone, that's great too. We'll take basically whatever we can use. So but I would check with your PSM once you get into the area, or your public affairs director, and just say, hey, what kind of equipment do I have to use? And they might even have budget available for you to purchase a camera for the area if a camera hasn't been purchased recently. So that would be just something that you would want to discuss with your whoever you're reporting to once you get to your area.
Yes, and Sister Olson, I know that Elder and Sister Perry do a lot of writing for Newsroom in Ghana, so I'm sure that we passed on to you, and they would probably be your best contact to ask them, because they're very involved in writing and taking pictures. So contact Sister Perry.
And Brother Havertz, this is Brother Detroit.
Oh, yeah, go ahead.
I just want to ask, in taking the candid photographs of members and non-members, to what extent do you need to have written permission from each of the people in the photographs that you take?
That's a really good question. question, and that's actually Sabrina's going to cover all of that information when I turn the time over to her. So hold on to that question. That's a good one. Sabrina,
We're gonna
did
get
you
there.
have? Yeah.
No, we're gonna get there, and it's gonna be so exciting. Intellectual property rights are so exciting. It just makes my heart sing. So we'll get to that for sure. So.
And then I think either Elder or Sister Olson have a question.
Oh, she's done. She just hasn't put her hand back down yet.
Oh, gotcha. Okay, I will.
You just hit your hand mark. There you go. There you go. Good job.
Okay. Yeah, good questions. And like Sabrina was saying, if all you have is your phone, then use what you have. And the nice thing is most smartphones now take really high quality pictures. You might not be able to do quite the same things if you have like different lenses on a DSLR camera, but they take good pictures. So don't be afraid to use what you have. Does anyone have a background or experience with design, art, or photography that knows what the rule of thirds is?
Yeah.
I do.
Okay, great. I think I heard two. Does someone want to briefly explain it? And I'll give my 2 cents as well.
Well, the subject of your photo, the focal point of your photo, you don't want to have in the center of the photo. You want to have it at a third point, and maybe 2 third points. A third point horizontally and a third point vertically.
Yes, exactly. Thank you. Did anybody else want to chime in? I'll go into this a little bit more.
Just about the horizon line shouldn't be in the center of the format. It's either a third from the top or a third from the bottom. It just gives a more interesting dynamic to the composition. As Elder
Vanderveer.
Vanderveer said.
Van Diver? Van Diver? Is that how you say that? I don't know how you say that.
Vandiver.
Vanderveer. Okay.
Vanderveer. Sorry, Brother Vanderveer.
Great. Perfect. Both of those explanations were right on target. So let me draw a picture to show exactly what you guys mean on both of those points. So can you see this if I draw a circle?
Yeah.
So the tendency, especially if you don't have as much experience with photos, is to put a person right in the center of the shot, just like was explained. And that's great. It puts attention right at the person that you're trying to capture in the photo. But the problem with that is that we end up with a lot of empty space up here. Usually there's not really anything interesting going on up here. And if there is anything interesting going on up here, it's not usually relevant to what you're trying to capture. We also have a bunch of empty space over here and over here, and we don't see as much of the person's body. And so that's, unless you're really trying to do that on purpose for some artistic reason, that's not usually the best option for taking photos. And so the rule of thirds gives us, it's not necessarily like the end all be all for photography or design. There's a lot of principles of composition, but it is a really good rule of thumb to use. And we want to try to draw attention to these crosshairs. And some cameras even let you turn on a template that you can see these lines, so you can kind of guide where you put your shots. But even if you don't, you can imagine 2 lines vertically dividing the screen into thirds and 2 lines horizontally dividing the screen into thirds that way. And so an example of how you might want to do this is, let's say that you have somebody here stacking boxes for a humanitarian service project, and they're looking in this direction. And this is something that's important because you usually want to put the person looking in the direction where there's more space on screen. Because if they were looking this way, it's kind of awkward. It's like, what are they looking towards? We can't see that. So that's one thing to keep in mind, is to where someone's tilted or looking towards, you want to have more space towards where they're looking. But you can see here, I'm trying to put them along, and I'm not a very good artist, but I'm trying to put them along this thirds line right here. And let's say they're, like I said, holding a box. Maybe I'd put the stack of boxes along this third line right here. So then we're capturing the action. Instead of putting this person's head in the middle of the shot, we're now seeing what they're doing. We're capturing the action, and we can see something in our focal point here and something in our focal point here, and we see their action. Another thing is that if you have two people, a lot of times you want to put one person, maybe that's a little bit too high, you want to put one person along this line and another person along this line, and have them talking to each other. And so then we've got something on all of our different lines. I'm going to put a video in the chat that you can watch that kind of explains the rule of thirds a little bit more, if you'd like to, that might have some more insights that might be helpful. As for the horizon lines, that's a really good point. Usually either this bottom third line right here, or this top third line is where you want to put the horizon line if you're capturing a wide shot of all the action going on, a landscape shot, or a wide shot of everything. There's a bunch of people in here. And typically, so if you put the horizon line around here, so let's say there's like a hill here, or maybe there's buildings right here, then your focal point is the sky, the clouds. That's supposed to be a cloud. The clouds and the sky, which for news type photos typically is not the case. We're not trying to capture the sky, as pretty as that would be. And so if you are doing a wider shot, you might consider putting the horizon line around this third line so we can see more of the action, what's going on down in this area, and maybe try to focus something on one of these crosshairs here, or maybe both of them. And then we see a little bit of the sky, which is pretty, but we fill most of our screen where more of the action is. So if I go back to these photos that I chose, and you can look through lots of different photos, you can look through some of your favorite photos online and see what you like. But if we divide the screen into thirds, you can kind of see where these photographers put the action. And I think you'll be interested to see that it falls pretty closely around those principles that we were just talking about. So just look at that for a minute and see what you notice. What I notice is we see the mother's head around the crosshairs right here, and then the son's head around this crosshair up here, and then the action, what she's pointing his attention to, along this crosshair right here. This one, we see this girl around this crosshair. We see the not exactly a horizon line, but the sidewalk, or I guess it's a horizon line that we can't really see further into the distance, but right there. And then we see him along this crosshair, and we even see missionaries kind of in the background. They're not necessarily the focus of the shot, but around this crosshair. So you can see they're kind of following the rule of thirds. This one's a little bit off, but it's not. It's a good looking shot. It follows pretty closely. She's pretty close to this third line right here, and she's right along this third line, and we can see the blood being drawn around this. Well, we can't see the blood, but we can see her preparing to do a blood draw right around this third line. It might be good to actually get a picture of someone being poked with a needle. I think she's dabbing her with a
she's swabbing her with
cleaner.
alcohol.
Yeah, Yeah. So, yeah, that's it for the rule of thirds. Let me put this video in the chat.
Oh, Matthew Elder I'm sorry, Van de Veer?
Yeah, I was just gonna comment that the person taking the picture is in control of the composition. I doubt that he asked people to move to those positions. It's by your station point and the distance from your subject and everything that you, as the photographer, can control that composition.
Yeah, good point. Thank you. Yeah, we don't, like we said, we don't want posed shots. So we don't want to go tell people, hey, stand here, put your head here. Instead, you as the photographer or whoever the photographer is will be moving around to get them in that position. You're not actually directing them on where to go. So yeah, excellent. Thank you for bringing that up. That's a really good point. Okay, well, let's move on to video for a minute. Okay, so the biggest thing, video is definitely more complicated and harder to get. And so sometimes you, did somebody trying to say something? Okay, sometimes you may be asked to get video, or you may be participating in that. But I think most of the time we're going to use maybe a volunteer in the area, or the area will hire a contractor, or there's somebody that knows what they're doing for taking videos. And the biggest thing that I want to point your attention to is that we actually have a whole training that we've put together that's updated as of this year. We started putting this together last year, that goes through what a videographer and video editor should know as far as meeting the video standards, where to access the right graphics, like the end of the video that has the church symbol come up, and the most recent up-to-date version of that, and like how to turn things in. We want content from all over the world for the World Report, if you've seen that, which is released around General Conference time, which is a little documentary of what has happened in the church for the past 6 months. And we'd love to use that content, but we have to make sure that the standards are met and that it's turned in the right way. And so this resource talks about all of that. And the nice thing about this as well is that it's not actually meant to be read from beginning to end, although you can, or whoever the videographer is that you're working with can, but it has links in it that you can skip right to the parts that are most important to you. So this link right here, the brand new videographer contractor, would be a really good place to start for somebody who's new that doesn't have that information. So I will put the link to this in the chat as well, and feel free to pass it along. And another thing that you can do is just pass along my contact information, and I'll put my contact information in the chat in the end as well. So videographer training. I want to make sure this link shows up right. There we go. Yeah, another thing to keep in mind is that if you know that the video resources are going to be used by headquarters in a newsroom video, or they're going to be used for the World Report, we need to make sure that the contract goes through headquarters, the contract with that videographer. And again, the best thing to do is just reaching out to me and working closely with your publishing services manager, the PSM in the area, to make sure that that contract goes through the right way. And they should know what to do. But again, feel free to contact me if you have questions about that. And then I just want to talk about keeping track of things and turning things in, and then I'll turn it over to Sabrina. So with photos and video, we want to keep track of everything. Hopefully the area the area that you're working with has a way to archive the photos and the videos. And that's really important for historical purposes. We're a record-keeping people, as well as, again, if we end up using it at headquarters, we can access that. And so work with whoever the publishing services manager is to make sure that photos are kept somewhere, that we can have a record of it, so that if we come back to you and reach out and say, hey, these photos that you took for this article, we really want to use those. Can we get access to all your files? Then you have a way to turn those in. And we will get you the way to turn it into us. And I'll explain that a little bit in just a minute. But if you're keeping everything with the area, if they have some way to keep track of everything, that will really help. Another thing is just making sure that we're turning it in right as well. So here's some things that I'll go over. When we need to use it quickly for the newsroom headquarters site, sometimes we'll just take what you've loaded to the website, or who you're working with, what they've loaded to the website, and we'll just take it straight from there, which is great. We don't necessarily need to contact you if that's the case. But sometimes we may reach out and say, hey, can you get us the files? If we need it pretty quickly, we like to have 2 to 4 megabyte size JPEG files. But if you're using a nice camera, or if you have, if you just took photos from your phone, just give us what you have on your phone. That's best. But if you're using a nicer camera and you have higher quality raw files, keep track of those so that we can take those and archive them as well. For turning in video, including for the World Report, that videographer training resource that I put in the chat that we just talked about has a section just for that, turning things in for the World Report and what files we need. We want to have the files that the editor is editing with. So if there's a contractor that's editing everything together, make sure that they're not just turning in, and hopefully the PSM, the Publishing Service Manager, is doing this, but make sure that they're not just turning in the final finished video, but they're actually turning in all of their files, so that if we need to re-edit something or do something differently here, we have access to that. And then the way that we will ask for those, either photos or videos, if we need to get them, is we'll either send you a Dropbox link that's managed by the church, or something called a Nuxio link. But either way, it should be pretty simple. You should have a link that you just click on, and you'll be able to drag and drop or upload the photos that way. And we'll provide that for you if we're asking for those here at church headquarters. The person who's in charge of archiving stuff that comes in from the different areas, his name is Chris Canfield. He works here in Salt Lake, and he's a really good resource to talk to about turning things in. And again, my contact information, you can reach out to me as well, and I can help you with that. So I will put both of those email addresses in the chat as well, so you have that. And I think that's about it for my part of the presentation. Does anyone have any questions?
Thank you.
It's a lot of information. Hopefully you don't have to worry too much about the technical side of like video or video editing, but if you just remember those principles for photos, and remember to contact me when you do have technical questions or turning things in, I think that's the main things to keep in mind. So thanks.
Thanks, Matthew. So I'm gonna go over all of the intellectual property best practices, copyright permission best practices for when you take these photographs and take these video of the folks in your area. I'm gonna share my screen. So here is just a couple of best practices to follow whenever you're taking photographs of people. If you can avoid third-party logos, so like if you know you're going to be, like, let's say there's a service project that you're going to be covering, if you can have the bishop or the stake president or whoever is in charge of the service project ask the participants to not wear like blaring logos on their t-shirts. I know it's not always possible, but that's just a best practice we like to follow. Fortunately, we do have ways around still using those photographs, even though they've got the third-party logos. But the church just tries to avoid any third-party logos for IP issues, but for also correlation issues as far as like endorsements and like collaborations and that kind of stuff. If you use any temple images, they're technically supposed to go through the temple department. I know with the areas, they kind of are in there, they have their own approval process. So I would say make sure that if the temple department is very particular about temple images being used, and they want to make sure that the temple is always used appropriately. So whether it's your Area 70 that's approving them, or your Director of Public Affairs that's approving them, just to making sure that you're using the temple images appropriately. Let's see, social media content. I'm not sure how much involvement you have with social media content, but we just want to be aware of what we're publishing to social media channels. I know with here at headquarters, we have to turn that around a lot quicker. So that would be something that you would want to chat with your area authority and making sure that you're using the social media channels properly. So those are just kind of a couple of things on best practices. Let's see. Whenever you create a video or like a handout or a poster or any type of graphic, a copyright notice and church logo / symbol has to always be on the product. That's a way that we protect the assets that we create, making sure that nobody else can use those, and so that we can prove that we have ownership over that content. So if you create a video in the area, make sure that they are using the correct end slate with the church symbol and logo on it, as well as the copyright notice. The copyright notice is this one thing right here, says copyright and then the year that it was released. So this obviously is 2015. That's not correct. You'd want to use 2021 if you're releasing it in 2021 or 2022, so on and so forth. And so every product needs to have the copyright notice as well as the logo and the church logo and symbol. Now that's only for products that we create. If you're just posting an image on the newsroom page, or if you're posting, a story or whatnot, obviously the site itself has a copyright logo and notice at the bottom of the page, so you're covered there. But if you create like a news graphic, or if you create a PDF handout that you're wanting to link up on the newsroom page, that PDF needs to have that copyright logo on it as a way to protect it. So any questions on that? I kind of went over that a little quick, but
I think there is a question by Rivers.
Yeah, I have, this doesn't make any sense at all to me. I mean, I don't know how to do any of this.
Okay.
So like, are you coming to St. George in the next little while? You could stay with me and tell me how.
I was going to make a comment for that. And I do feel your pain, Sister River. And I thought the same thing, but just so that if you are writing, and correct me if I'm wrong, Sabrina, I did a lot of stories for Newsroom when we were in Africa. If you post a picture, automatically that copyright comes up on the picture.
Oh, okay.
You don't have to add it on there.
Right.
Is that right? However,
it's on the page. Yeah, it's on the newsroom page, and I can show you, like, I'll get onto Newsroom and I can kind of give you an idea of what I'm talking about, because we actually just did a story where we created a graphic and we had images, and so you can kind of see the difference. But anyway, continue what you're saying while I look for this story.
Can you
And then-
explain the difference between an image and a graphic?
Yep, I sure can. I'm just gonna find that story.
I mean, when I would take a picture that someone else took, like they would give me a picture, I would just swipe over that copyright thing and then give credit to the person who took the picture also. Because it automatically isn't it just like automatically goes to copyright for the church, but there was some pictures I knew that a missionary took or somebody took, and then I gave them just put their name under the picture. But a lot of it is natural. It just automatically goes on.
Yeah, with the Chorus is the platform that we use, and so there's a lot of automatic things that happen when you upload images. And so obviously this is an image. We didn't put the caption, but normally below it would have the copyright 2021 IRI all reserved Inc. blah blah. Anyway, so here's an infographic. Okay, so if I click on this infographic and this is a graphic that was created by one of our departments, and it has just a bunch of images and things on it, information. And then if you come down to the bottom, they added the church logo with the copyright notice, right?
No.
So this is an infographic. This is something that you create. You take 3 or 4 assets and you merge them all together and you create this product basically. Whereas if you have just a simple photograph, like we'll go to this one. We've got a carousel with photographs, and here's it will always automatically put Intellectual Reserve Inc. as the copyright owner whenever you upload photographs, but you are able to change that to be whoever the photographer is. So like if we hire somebody, if we and we don't own the copyright, you can put photo courtesy of and then name the photographer. And so it gives you that flexibility within Chorus to label how. So we own the rights to these photographs, so that's why we have the Intellectual Reserve copyright notice. But if we hired a photographer and they wanted to maintain the copyright, we would credit the photographer at that point. So, and that's what I was going to go over as far as the different contracts that we have available. So, let me unshare my screen here real quick. Oh, where's my mouse? I lost my mouse.
And just so you know, we'll be going over this on Thursday when we meet with Jason Mortensen. He'll be talking about Chorus and giving you a good overview of Chorus and how it works. So
Right.
a lot of he'll be able to answer a lot of your questions too.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah. So he'll be able to tell you this is where you can enter in all your IP stuff, or this is where you can enter in your caption for the photograph, and that kind of stuff. And so he'll show you that. So this is a form that we use frequently. It's called a release to use image. This is something that we use to get permission from whoever we're taking a picture of, right? So let's say we're at a service project and we snap a couple of pictures and there are people that are prominent in the photograph. If you can ask them to sign one of these release to use images, that's great. Now, I know it's difficult to do that on every single photo shoot, especially if you've got a photo shoot with 50 people. It's like, how can you expect one person to go, here, sign this, here, sign that, here, sign it. So the nice thing with Newsroom is we have, it's kind of like, it's not an exception, but we call it a reporting statement, where if these people are invited to come to this event and they know that it's going to be, it's a public event that will be, news media is going to be there. It's kind of the assumption that if you come to the event, you could be photographed, you could be, in a video or whatnot. And so they call it, the reporting statement is called news use, meaning we can only use that specific photograph for that specific event. We would never reuse it in another context or anything like that. Now, that being said, if you were able to get them to sign one of these release to use images, then we could use that photograph outside of that one specific event. So I always say, if you can get it, great, perfect, try your hardest. But if it's too difficult, or if it's taking away from what you should really be doing at that specific event, then I would say don't worry about it. The only exception to this rule is if we feature a youth under 18 or if we quote somebody under 18. We have to get the guardian's permission. That is a rule that the Intellectual Property Office will not yield on. Is any minor has to have a guardian sign one of these releases to get a quote or a feature image. Now, if they're just in the crowd with their mom and dad, it's not a big deal. We can use that news use reporting statement. Is there any questions on this one?
What ties that document to a specific image? Is there a file number or?
So if you have them sign it, you can put in here like a file number. You can, if you have like a project number in the area that they want to associate, you could stick it in this field. There's also this line here where it says reserved for IRI description of content. So you could put young woman in blue dress with purple flowers, you know, just to kind of describe the picture, or if it would be, you know, a temple groundbreaking in South Africa, or sorry, that's not a good, I don't even know if they're having a temple groundbreaking in South Africa, but
Yes, they do. Yes, they do.
okay, well, there you go. I got it right. So you could fill this in with information to kind of describe the photograph, and maybe describe what the person was wearing, like if they're wearing a green dress with white flowers or a white dress with purple flowers, just to kind of describe the photograph so that you can link the two together. Again, if you have a file number within your area that they base every project off of, you could also stick it in this area where it says file number. And then you could give this form to your PSM and they can get it filed into our rights management system, which is the goal for everything to be in the rights management system, so that if for whatever reason headquarters like, hey, I really like that photograph, I wonder if we've got permission to use that photograph, I can go into the rights management system here in Salt Lake, even though it was ingested in South Africa, and I can look at that contract and say, oh, perfect, and I can connect those two things. So that's the preference. I know a lot of the areas don't use the rights management system as probably as much as they should. And so if they're like, oh, I don't have time or I can't or whatever, you're always welcome to send your contracts to me and I can get them filed into the system for you. I can get a contract number assigned to them, and then that way they're in the system forever and we don't have to worry about them getting lost. Because a lot of the times some of the areas are still doing paper copy, like hard copies, and they can get lost, especially if you're moving from offices to offices, and maybe make things get lost in the shuffle. So
Sabrina, quick question. This is Sister Green.
Yeah.
Could you remind me what PSM is?
A publishing service manager.
Thank you.
So you've got your public affairs director, which is who you will be reporting to, and then you've got a publishing service manager, which they deal with a lot of video, imagery, that kind of stuff in the area. So they're going to be the ones that create a lot of stuff for like the area pages, the area Church of Jesus Christ pages, whereas you guys will be focusing more on newsroom pages. And so sometimes they cross, sometimes they don't. So, but if you ever need help with the rights management system, your PSM should be able to help you navigate that.
Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. Another form I wanted to go over is this is the Creative Works Unlimited License. This is a form that we use. Oh, sorry, one more thing on this release to use image. This is only used for employees. So like if I go take a picture, missionaries, so if you go take a picture of somebody and you get a release to use their image with this form. So only church employees and church volunteers should be using this form. Now that being said, there have been some times where you'll get a volunteer or an independent contractor where they're like, I'm an amateur, I don't have a release to use image form. The IPO, when I say IPO, sorry, the Intellectual Property Office will accept these forms, even though a non-church employee or non-church volunteer had another person sign it. Does that make sense? It's not the preference, but they'll allow it basically. So the preference is for this to be used for your use and employees' use to get a release for the person that you're taking a picture of. This next form is called a Creative Works Unlimited License. So we want to highlight Creative Works. So anything a member in your area that contributes to the story. So let's say you're doing a story about a youth in the area who is giving of their times and their talents, and the person that you're highlighting took pictures at a young women's event where they knitted hats. And she's like, oh yeah, I've got a bunch of photographs from when we knitted hats at this young women's activity. They would fill this out and have and sign it. Well, their guardian, I guess, since it is a young woman, would fill this out and sign it. So this is to give us release to use their content, whether it be videos, imagery, paintings, poetry, any type of asset that they give to us to use for the story. You would have them fill this out to give the church permission to use that content. And so that's what I would prefer. And again, these are all preferences that we would have them fill out. There are other ways around it, but I wanted to show you the preferences first before I show you the exceptions. This next form is called a Creative Works Assignment. That's if we, let's say we have a member in the area that you have gotten in contact with, and they're like, oh yeah, I've got this great story that I want to write up and take care of, and you're like, okay, great. And so you're collaborating with this person in the area, doing all these things where the church has a little bit more hands-on on this story. We would want to have them sign the Creative Works Assignment, because this actually transfers the copyright to the church. So the difference between the Creative Works Unlimited license is the owner maintains the copyright. This Creative Works Assignment, they transfer the copyright to the church, meaning they no longer have that copyright. A lot of the times we want to have volunteers sign this, especially if they're doing temple assignments, like taking pictures of temples, because the church wants to maintain those copyright permissions and not the photographer. So that's kind of the difference between these two. If we are doing a story where the church needs or wants to maintain the copyright, we want to have them fill out this assignment versus this license. So, and I don't expect you all to remember this. I want you to ask questions and do and if you ever are like, I don't know which form to use, shoot me an email. I'll tell you which one to use, because this is definitely not your job. But I just wanted to give you guys a reference of what I'm talking about when we are discussing stuff over email. So questions, comments, concerns. I'm always up for that.
This is Sister Murdoch. Partway through our mission, well, during the first part of our mission, the previous public affairs directors or other church communication would put up a sign at a church event that would say, you entering this thing gives your consent.
Yep.
Photos. Is that still good to put up a little paper?
For sure.
Okay.
Yeah, if you're not able to get signatures for a release to use image or whatever, for sure we want, or if you can make an announcement over the pulpit saying, hey, this is going to be recorded or it's going to be photographed. If you don't want to be in the pictures, let one of these missionaries know, and we'll put you in another area so that you're not in the picture. You know, we want to make everybody comfortable as much as they can, and we definitely don't want to use an image if they're not comfortable using that image. So, Sister Rubber, did you have another question? Your hand is up. I just didn't know if you had another question. Okay. Anyway, and so yeah, so there's lots of different paths. Whenever I talk about intellectual property, I don't know if you guys remember those Choose Your Own Adventure books. I used to read them a lot when I was growing up. It's literally, you choose your own adventure and you go down a different path, and you think, oh, well, you need this contract. Well, no, because this changed. So we changed direction. So we went this way. And so I'm here to answer any questions. If you ever have a question as far as what permission to use, what contract to use, anything like that. I wanted to show, we do, and I'll be sending you each couple an email with all of these contracts that we went over today, so you can look at them a little closer. You can read through them if you really want to go to sleep tonight. They'll put you to bed right away. And also, I'm going to be sending you what's called a volunteer disclosure statement. And basically what that is, that's for you missionaries to sign. And it basically just, so that way I don't have to bug you every time, like, hey, Sister Reaver, can you send me an email permission saying that I can use this story that you wrote? So the nice thing with this form it treats you like an employee, but you're a volunteer. And so you don't, anything that you create on behalf of the church during your mission will be filed under that contract number. And so it's nice to not have to bug you every time when you create something or write something. So I'm going to be sending each of you an email out with that contract on it. So if you have any questions about that, you can talk to me, or I can answer any questions. But I did want to go over one thing before we're done. I know that a lot of you will be creating stories. And so I wanted to show you a couple of sites where you can pull images and we have blanket agreements with these websites where you can pull images of, let's say you're writing a story about Mother's Day. And so you can type in mothers and you can go to this page and you can pick these photographs of different photo. And this is one of the sites, it's called Unsplash. In fact, I don't know if you noticed, this is a picture that I selected for our newsroom Mother's Day post that just came out on Sunday. This is just this one. And so this is a great website. I love Unsplash. It's got a lot of candid stuff. You do have to be careful because some of the pictures can be a little revealing, and so you just have to be careful with your searches because it's a free site for all photographers to upload their content, and then people can download it and use it for stock photography. But this is a really cool site. I really like their pictures. And then another one that I use quite a bit is called Pixabay. And it's a great website as well. It just has nice pictures that you can use to enhance your stories. If you don't, because not all of our pictures have to deal with the story. So you might need something to, maybe it's an announcement about something, and you might need something to enhance the story. And so you can use any of these stock photography sites. So when I send out my email a little bit later with those contracts, I've got all of the links for all of the different sites that we use, as well as the Titan website. Titan is our digital asset management system that we use for our pictures that we've, like pictures of general authorities and that kind of stuff. And so you can go through there and search for different pictures. And I can actually show you it real quick. Everybody should have access to this, and if you don't, let us know, we can get you access. But it's just basically, let's say I want to find a picture of President Nelson for an article or whatever. I can search here and it'll pull up any photographs with his name in it, and then you can kind of search through and see which one will fit best for your story. The things that you want to stay away from when you're searching for these things. So like if you were to click on a picture, see how it says it has a green? That's usually a good indication that it's okay to use. But there is a lot of data entry error. So like if you've got this one where it's yellow and you're like, well, it's just a picture of him speaking at a pulpit. Why would it be yellow? And so in those situations, if you ever find a picture where you're not able to download it, or it's got that yellow little caution symbol, you can send it to me and I can say, oh yeah, you can use it. It's because that just means that there's a restriction on the photograph. And so and just because it has a restriction doesn't necessarily mean it's a no-go. It just means we need to look at the restrictions listed within the contract to make sure we're within the guidelines of that specific contract. So anyway, so you look for an email from me coming soon, and I've written up this email. If you have any questions, you can call me, you can text me, you can IM me. I'm usually online at night, so if some of you are, I don't know if you guys are if you're traveling or if you're staying in your area, or if you're going to be going to Guam or South Africa or England or Germany or wherever. But I'm usually online at night, so if you ever want to IM me, you're more than welcome to do that as well. I'm always here. I definitely want to help you because it helps the church. This is something that the First Presidency has spent a lot of time in making sure that the church is protected, because a lot of people want to take advantage of the church and sue us for lots of money. So, for Elder and Sister Van Diver, what can I do for you? You had a question?
Yes, the email that you're sending to, are you talking about our missionary email or our other email?
Your other email. I asked Sister Murdoch for your emails, so keep an eye out for those. If your preference is to communicate with your church email, we can do that. Or if your preference is to communicate with your personal email, we can do that. Whichever your preference is fine with me. But she sent me all of your personal emails, so keep an eye out for those. And then if you can return and sign those volunteer disclosure statements as soon as possible, that would be great, so I can get those filed away. Let's see.
We print this, sign it, scan it, and send it back.
Yeah, unfortunately, the IPO is not up with the 21st century. And they prefer that we get a print signature. And so, yeah, so that's the preference, is and if you don't have a scanner, you can take a picture with your iPhone or regular or just smartphone. Sorry, I have an iPhone, so that's why I say iPhone a lot. With your smartphone, and then you can email it that way as well if you don't have a scanner. So that, let's see, is it, how do you say, let's see, Herman Dutoy?
Dutoy, yeah. No, I think you answered my questions.
Oh,
and
okay.
That second site with the stock images, you mentioned the name very quickly. What was the name of that?
Pixabay. Pixabay. Yeah, there's about 4 that we use. I'll have the links in my email that I send you, but there's Unsplash, there's Pixabay, there's Pexels. We have a blanket agreement with Adobe. So if you get onto Adobe Photos and you find a picture that you really, really like that'll work for what you need, you can email me, or you can email Matthew, and we can download it for you. So that way your area doesn't have to pay for it, because the church has a corporate account with them. And so we can download it for you and then email it to you, because you have to have special permissions to download from Adobe.
And Getty Images, do you use them?
We do use Getty Images. The only thing with Getty is that we don't have a blanket agreement, so you have to pay for it per image.
Okay.
And so if your area wants to purchase the image, then I can definitely help you with that as well. But you would have to purchase it through your area office.
Thank you.
Yeah. Any other questions?
Sabrina, quickly, this is Sister Grain. The Titan site, so the first 2, Unsplash and Pixabay, those are like stock photos. Titan, what is that format?
So Titan is the church's
It's associated with the church.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's our archive, our database that we put all of our photographs that we have taken. So if you need a specific image of, you need like an official portrait of President Nelson or one of the brethren, you can download it from there. Or like if one of the sister auxiliary leaders or organizations, you can download stuff from there. And then they have pictures from past trips that the brethren have taken. It's a collaboration of all of the photographs that the church has. We've got really, really old photographs of like the Salt Lake Temple and like the Pioneer era, that kind of stuff. So it's just kind of goes from one spectrum to the other. So yeah. Any other questions? Okay, sorry, we're a little bit over time, but again, please email me, please text me, call me, whatever you need, because if we can get ahead of it, it saves a lot of heartache in the long run. Oh, one more last thing on that email. I'm gonna send you a little blanket blurb statement that we use, because a lot of the times when you're in these areas, people don't have printers, they can't print off something and sign it. And so if they're not able to sign our contracts, or they don't feel comfortable signing our contracts because they don't understand the language or whatever, we can always do a simple email statement releasing, whatever photos that you have. It's just, obviously the church, the preference is to use the contract, but the church understands that, if you get somebody who's in the middle of nowhere and they don't have very good internet service, they're not going to be able to print something off, sign it, scan it back in a timely manner. So like, even if they just, respond with the email verbiage, the intellectual property office is content with that, because they can see it came from that person's email address and it has the verbiage releasing the content, whether it be, text, video, images, and whatnot. So So anyway, thanks for letting me take some of your time. Sorry if I put some of you to sleep. It's just the nature of IP. We're just